as I pick through the musical tree of life, it's always invigorating to connect with people on new media, cats that have really sort of tried to not get pigeonholed in their careers and being able to play in a myriad of different settings. Sometimes just whatever the song calls for. It could be rhythm chops. It could be more stretched out, long improvisational solos. It could be with quantized rhythm. It could be with human rhythm. My guest today is somebody who's carved out his own niche in Brooklyn with his own bands and collaborating with some more luminary cats in order to sing for his supper. Mattias Loscher, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. How are you doing? I'm very happy to be here.
It's an honor to have you, brother. You know, it's funny. I don't know if you, I mean, I just got hip to this kind of music maybe last year. It's referred to as shoegaze music. Have you heard of that before?
Oh, funny enough, I have.
Yeah. So I mean, like, and it's all music, as Duke Ellington said. But
Yes.
a lot of those cats. I mean, it was funny because I had a dear friend who's an incredible guitar player, who was on tour with one of these shoegaze artists, and obviously it was good. The bread was good. The money was good.
hmm
But this was a situation where I've come to realize that for the most part, um, cats that are shoegaze people, I mean, they don't really have a command of their apparatus. They don't really have the foundational stuff, and they're basically using pedals and phaser and all types of different things to create these soundscapes that I guess
hmm
for modern cats, they get off on that stuff. But I mean, your middle name is Pedals, and I wanted to ask you about before you started really experimenting with different pedal boards and different kinds of effects. How did you get musical vocabulary embedded in you before you decided to enhance that with effects?
Yeah. So basically, my story, just real quick, my background is originally classical music. So my mother is an opera singer. My sister is a solo violinist. So when she picked up the violin at the age of 4 years old, she just practiced and never stopped. So from day one, I was introduced that the passion and the love for music goes hand in hand if you want to do this professionally with hard, consistent work.
Mm.
For me personally, that was not my beginning because I played the cello first, and that was not for me. But once I first was introduced to BB King by my mom when I was like 8 or 9 years old, it was a rap. That was like the sound that resonated with my heart, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do from that day forward. So my foundation was definitely when it comes to playing guitar and uh, g- getting anything under my fingers that I could, back in the day before the internet, trying to get every record I could and experiencing it like from the blues, I ended up at rock. I got into Steve Vai and Joe
Yes,
Satriani, and
yes.
obviously the superhero Jimi Hendrix. But then I ended up being asked by a former teacher who was teaching the brass ensemble in our school, in high school, if I could join for a few Benny Goodman songs that they tried to play guitar. And I was given the sheet music, and I just had no clue what I was looking at. So I reached out to a local jazz guitar player by the name Wolfgang Pointner, who's still a dear friend and one of the most incredible musicians and most of all also teachers that I know.
I need to get with that cat immediately.
He's
I mean, I cannot believe I
yes.
don't know his name offhand, but
hmm
my dear friend, I don't know if you ever knew this cat, but I'll send you the interviews afterwards.
hmm
An incredible bass player from Germany called Wolfgang Melz, and he played with Gabor Szabo,
Oh
and he
yes. Oh yes. Okay.
played with Jim Keltner. So just that
hmm
name,
Yes.
I mean, you'd consider him not just a mentor, but an elder as well.
Absolutely. Like without any doubt, because like his ability to teach like jazz guitar or jazz, not just in regards to these are the chords, these are the notes, these are the arpeggios, these are scales, but really teach the music is outstanding. And from one day to another, being like all into the metal world, spending one afternoon with this guy and listening to all the EPs, and he played everybody to me, from Benson to Wes to
Yeah.
George Van Apps to Charlie Christians to Pat Metheny. I still have the sheet, the paper at home where I wrote down the names and the albums. He changed my life, right? So from that day to another, I started studying with him, and I was all the way in into jazz, right? So that really, really changed my life. So my foundation, really, if I look back, starting at the age of about around 16 years old, was heavily in jazz, you know? And I want to say that's, you know, where basically my foundation lies in regards to, you know, harmony, but of course, rhythm, you know, melody. That's where I learned everything, you know? And then expanding from there, obviously, into all the branches of the beautiful tree of African American music, into funk, into R&B, you know, James Brown, all of this, you know, as you mentioned in the introduction, the ability to play rhythm, you know, which I work on daily, right? It's so fundamental to this music, right? So yeah, the foundation I would say is like hard work, you know, and love and dedication. Now, as for this shoegazing, if you don't mind, if I might
No,
just
I mean,
yes,
you can riff
thank
on.
you.
I mean, what I'm saying is,
Yes.
it took me a minute because, you know, but I realized
Mhm.
really, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I guess that, you know, I mean, everyone has to sing for their supper, but there's just something. You know, I went back and I've been listening to interviews that I did with George Garzone or Phil Woods, and you know, I mean, we're
Yes.
talking like Phil Woods. I mean, Phil Woods. I have an album of his that very rare album, and he's playing like an Echoplex on it, you know, on a
Mhm.
saxophone. It's just like, but those guys, and I didn't really know what they meant, and then all of a sudden it became very clear what I actually saw the shoegaze music was.
Mhm.
Don't even think about doing all these effects and stuff until you actually know your instrument. Like, you know, otherwise you're just, I mean, it's just wanking it. And the fact that people want to come see this kind of music is
Mhm.
like, and that it's able to be monetized is kind of
Mhm.
depressing. I mean, that's just, but when I saw that your middle name is Pedals and I look at the cats that you're playing with,
Mhm.
I'm like, there's no way that this cat is, you know, just like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, he's got his root, he's got the foundation like a freaking house, and
Oh,
it's built like a house, and then you can get interesting with your effects. Anyway, go ahead on that.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's, you know, in my consideration, it's a little bit like this. Like the name, first of all, the name Petals was given to me, and it is just one of those names that I didn't like, and it
Yeah,
sticked. And I
right.
think it stick because I didn't like it.
Of course, that's
But
always the way it is.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but in my main band, my own project that I co-lead with the phenomenal bass player Stefan Condard,
Yeah.
our drummer at the time, the band is called the RUFF PACK. The drummer at the time, Daru Jones, we would be on the road, and it was at the time where I expanded in all the sounds, like just to make the trio sound bigger, and because like a lot of the influences in that trio come from not just jazz and rock and funk, but also from hip hop. So I was
Mhm.
very much interested in like expanding the nuances of the sound of the guitar to maybe really make it sound like an original record, right? Or like, you know, that was the idea. So I brought a lot of gear out, but I was never a person who had like a pedal board. So I would just set it up every single time, which would take forever. And that's where the name Pedals came from. Because, like, obviously, my bandmates made so much fun of me because I carried around all that stuff and it was just madness until I gave up and finally got a pedal board, right? So that's the name. When it comes to pedals itself, for me, and that's my personal take on it, it's like an instrument by itself. Now, if you really know how to use a pedal well, or like a guitar or whatever you work with, I personally believe you need to have the vision how it sounds, right? Like
Mm.
first comes the imagination, right? And then
Mhm.
still I'm daily surprised that some sound comes out of my guitar and that I didn't expect and it inspires me. But overall, when I use pedals, I know exactly what I want from that sound. Just like I pick my low E string on the guitar and I know how it sounds. When I do multiple pedals, I know how they affect each other, just like the different guitar strings affect each other if I play a chord. So for me, it's like that I really, when I use effects, they're just an extension of my expression. As for the shoegazers, the reason why I laughed is because I'm not too familiar with the actual music, but in rehearsals with my friend Miss Lauren Hill, I played for her for several years.
Yes.
At some point, she always asked me to do very, very challenging things. And one thing she liked about me was that I'm really willing to expand with the sounds as far as possible. And at some point, she laughed at me as I was like trying to play and change the sound on the floor with my pedals, where I constantly change the sound there too, because I hear it in my head how it's supposed to sound, and you just always adjust to the location, to the acoustics of wherever you are. And she laughed, and she's like, "You look like what's it called again? A shoegazer." And this is how I found out about the term. She kind of made fun of me, but in a nice way. So for me, it's like I know people who use the guitar with one cable and one amp, and still, I don't feel what they play sometimes, right? It might be overplaying, or like, I don't know for what reason, It's not like, let's say you have somebody like Peter Bernstein and he plays one note and everything is clear, right?
Right.
Go straight to the heart, or Jim Hall, or whoever, right? Some people just overplay, and some people overdo the pedals too. But for me, it's like, if some, in the end of the day, what counts for me is, personally, that's my take. If I feel the music in my heart, if it resonates, if it has soul, I'm all for it. Whatever the means are, I don't really mind. Sometimes it's even,
no, I think
right.
no, you're. I mean, it's just it only came just because as a journalist, as a patron of the music, as a devotee of original spiritual communal conversational music, it's I just want you to talk about in general, just stepping back from your own, take it out of, don't personalize it per se, but
yes,
from your own gigs and career. But it's just this idea that, I mean, your teacher's talking about George Van Ness and Joe Pass and Pat Martino, and I mean, on and on and on and on and on. And I'm not in a nostalgia bag, but what I'm saying is that those guys were their ability and their command of the instrument, but also the conversation they had within the band, was able to be monetized on a touring circuit. And now, I mean, a lot of that shoegaze music and a lot of music in general is manufactured. And quite honestly, a lot of music that's being monetized these days is noise. It's not sound. And I just wonder, like, taking it away from, because you're playing with accomplished poets, rappers, singers in your own bands, and you're not about that. But why the heck is stuff being monetized when the authentic stuff can no longer be recognized? And I just wonder, maybe the better question is, why do you think we've veered towards this place where either people are willing to pay money to see regurgitated hits from 50 years ago with a lot of these tribute bands, and also just and the ambivalence to actually invest in stuff that they may not know the name of, but it's the kind of conversational music that your teacher taught, and those cats have made a living at. You can riff on that any way you want.
Yes, no, I fully hear you. I mean, it's honestly, here's the one thing. I cannot tell, let's say, I've been in the United States since around 2006, 2008. That's when I moved. So before, I'm not really aware, like, was there always people who basically just tried to make the money out of it, right?
Right.
At this point, right now, of course, the extent is overwhelming. And personally, as for myself, I feel it too, because like if I release a new album or something, it's really, really hard to get it heard, because just the amount of music released every day is just unheard of, right? I personally believe it has a lot to do with what kind of things are being monetized and heard and being promoted, with, moving with where the attention span of the average listener these days is,
I did. Yeah, I
if
did.
if if we spend, and I mean, I have my daughter is 8 years old, so I'm a lot reading about the influence of cell phones, of social media. I'm very, aware of like the effects of all of that, right? And knowing that kids, teenagers scroll 8 hours a day on their phone, where I'm like, how is that even possible, right? If you
Yeah,
all you
it's
if you all you get is like maximum 5 to 10 seconds, you go to the next, right? At what point are you even able to comprehend or like be open enough to experience something, right? But then the crazy part is also that very often when I catch a student, somebody taking a lesson with me, or even some kids, sometimes friends of my daughter, whoever it is, or like the friends of my niece, if you play them something, you catch them at the right moment, they are being so touched in their heart with the music, right? It's so liberating to see that, It's just hard, I think, for the average listener or person, also no matter what age, to actually get to the real stuff, because we're just being blasted with so much formula-based music.
you're
But like
nailing
then,
it. I mean, that's the thing is not it's
yeah.
not just it's a deluge of primarily visual material. It might be music, but people are watching people play as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
hearing it on the radio or record. And
Mm-hmm.
then just the deluge of it's not even uh it's not even the content, it's just how mediocre all the content is. So like
Mm-hmm.
basically Aretha Franklin, King Curtis, Jimi Hendrix, I mean, there's always been shysters in the business.
Yes.
I recognize that, Thelonious Monk played to sometimes three people at the five spot. I mean, it wasn't like these places were filled to the rafters. I'm not trying to
Mm.
romanticize,
Mm-hmm.
but even Monk, I mean, those guys had to clear a bar to get a record produced. Like it had to be of a certain
Yes.
quality. It doesn't matter what the genre
Mm-hmm.
was. Now, that's great that everybody can publish stuff. I can put out our interview today, and I mean, I feel liberated, and it's going to be high
Mm-hmm.
quality. But um, yet, because of that, we are awash in mediocrity. And
Yes.
so, I
Yeah.
want you to talk about what a lot of the guys, I don't care if it's Reggie Workman or the late great
Mm-hmm.
Roy Haynes or Lou Donaldson or Dr. Lonnie Smith, all these guys helped me find my voice. And
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whatever the definitions of Western success are, what they did talk to me about was striving for greatness,
Yeah.
striving for excellence. And that's what I wanted you to talk to younger kids about because the truth is, I live in Tucson and we have a farm system of some of the baddest cats around. And
Mm-hmm.
they're all there and they're all trying to figure out how to sing for their supper. And they all have day gigs, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still there. And so I want you to talk to people about how you've learned to rise above the morass and strive for greatness.
Oh, whew, that's a big topic.
And
But
it's a forever journey. I mean, it's not like
yes.
that's what I'm saying. But that to me is
But
like that, it doesn't matter. You could be making millions of dollars, and if you have no creative control of your art, you could be the most
mhm.
miserable person in the world.
Yes, exactly. And that's the point. So, Jake, first of all, I really, really appreciate this conversation, because just as every other artist, I have to deal also with the social media and all that and promote my stuff and just talking about real stuff.
Real
What you
stuff.
just
Yeah.
said is beautiful and it really that's the key.
Thank
Um, Personally, for me, like dealing with the time right now that we are in, and so quote unquote not to sell out, not to give up my gift for some music that I really don't feel. And I
you.
I,
Right.
I do I do that too. I'm turning down things too where I'm like, this is not where I'm at. Um
Yes.
it leads to a very humbling question. Why are we even doing what we are doing?
Right.
Why am I doing this? And in the end of the day, I realized, okay, I'm not in this for the big success. Although, of course, I want my music to be heard. I need to live off it. All of
Yeah.
that is essential. But really, I have to do it because I have to do it. You know, it's just like a human need that I have, or like, it's in my heart. I have this. I write music. I do this. Um, as you mentioned, Roy Haynes, rest in peace. I spent the whole day listening to his stuff. I mean, Pat Metheny's trio.
Oh my
Now he
God.
sings, now he sobs.
Yeah.
Monk. Every. I mean, what a wonderful legend, you know. And looking at this legacy just really shows what it's all about, you know. Like stick to your own guns, stick to your truth, do your thing, you know. And that's also something I experienced with many great artists I work with. Like I mentioned her before, Miss Lauryn Hill. That's what she does. This is her way. And then people want her to play the same song the same exact way they listen to the record. She says, "Oh, well, then listen to the record.
That's
If
right.
you come to my concert, this is where I'm at.
She's such
This
a
is how it
badass.
sounds
Yeah, I
out."
love her.
She does her thing. And you know what the crazy part is? Then people come, and there's a lot of people who expect exactly what she is supposed to do, you know, in regards to let's play the record as is. And many of them are disappointed. But then many of them are just floored. And most of all, again, a lot of young people that come to shows or used to come to shows that I interacted with afterwards that would be um, young enough to maybe know the record, but have no personal history with the record because they're too young, right?
Absolutely.
There were babies when the record was made, for example, the Miseducation. They hear it differently. And they listen to it not with the sentimental, you know, nostalgic ear, which is just fine too. But you know, they experience it pure as what it is. They take it as something new. And then I'm always like, okay, if somebody is open and not closed, they're, you know, they're receiving. They will receive. Like that's why I feel like real music, real stuff that comes from the heart, real culture can never, you know, never ever die out, you know, as hard as it is, you know?
That you can never kill the soul. No matter, I mean,
Yes.
the
Amen.
spirit, I mean, you can,
Mhm.
and they're trying to do, I mean, in a very duplicitous way. I mean, they're trying to kill the brain. As you said, I have two daughters.
Mhm.
I must say I feel very blessed because my older daughter does have an attention span and she obviously has an iPhone, but they can
Mhm.
kill the head, they can kill the heart, they can't kill the soul. And you know, it's like, I listened back this morning. I was going through some records, and I found, it's just part of it is that the music that your teacher taught you, that I love, was popular music at that time, jazz. It was in
Mhm.
the early 70s. I was listening. They had like 8 volumes of this, live at Newport, but it wasn't in Newport. They did it at New York City, and
Mm.
and it was 1972, and I'm listening to Blue and Bossa, and it's Zoot Sims
Ooh.
and Roy Haynes was on drums,
Mm.
and Kenny Burrell was on guitar. He
Oh my.
interviewed Kenny. I mean, that dude came out of a relatively stable household in Detroit, but I mean, the blues were everywhere. I mean, he was seeing
Mhm.
John Lee Hooker. There were no books on materials. He was transcribing solos with Donald
Mhm.
Byrd off
Mhm.
records. I mean, this was like they were putting their life story into their solos. And I just wanted
Yes.
you to talk about like where how not that because I mean the story never ends. But it's really hard to play the blues, which is really adjacent to jazz and something that I really don't hear a lot. And jazz to me today, modern jazz, very classicalized, very intellectual. I don't hear
Yes.
a lot of
Mhm.
blues, or rather storytelling, or rather adversity. And I just wanted you to talk about some time in your career or life that you faced some adversity and how you learn to channel it, overcome it, and have it become part of your melodic story.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
And
I
maybe there's
mean,
nothing. It's
mhm.
just
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to go see blues music, and more credit to people, but if you're growing up in suburbia, do you really have a story to tell? Have you really
Hmm.
ever felt the blues? Have you been down? I mean, like that's part of the issue with George Van Eps and Joe Pass and Kenny Burrell. I mean, Kenny Burrell shreds this solo on this ballad. I don't know what it is,
Mhm.
but it's like, I mean, it could have been freaking, Mississippi, Fred McDowell. I mean, it could have been anybody, but it was Kenny
Yeah.
Burrell, and
Oh my.
it was so blues. And I just wonder
Yeah.
about. if you feel like you're able to channel some kind of your life story through some of your playing.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I mean, let's put it this way. Everybody has their own story, right? Everybody
Right.
has their up and downs. Everybody
Right.
has their hard times and their good times, hopefully. So I feel like if it's authentic, everybody really does have a story to tell on their own, right? Um, Naturally, the blues in its purest form is a Black American art form, right?
Yes.
So I feel it is an accessible music and culture, but it also has to be addressed with the right respect. And with that, I feel like the most important thing for me personally with the blues was such a deep love in my heart since day one, since I discovered BB,
Hmm.
was to listen, right? And to this day, this is what I do. Um, right now, I went back to an old George Benson record from the early 60s, where he's like in his early 20s and sounds like the greatest master who ever touched the guitar. And
Right.
I'm playing along as good as I can, but I listen and I just take it in for what it is. And then it comes out in any way I let it come out. I try not to influence when I play, what I think about, or like just let it be what it is. Um, I do know a lot of players, like, since I'm originally from Europe, right? I'm originally Austrian, and a lot of players that absolutely don't have the background there, right? Their approach to music was study as much as they can, maybe come to New York once in a while, but of course, like, they experience the culture in a different way from the outside, in a certain way, right? But many of them still have so much to say and so much to give in the music because um, it does come from the heart. And I feel like they did their due diligence and listened, right? Which brings us back to what you mentioned early in the conversation, um, to put in the work, right? And I feel like the blues just needs the same amount of work than anything else, maybe even more, right? Because like for some people it seems like, okay, if you take a blues solo and you only noodle around on a pentatonic, that's it and you got it, but that's not it at all. And I personally feel like the more time I dedicate to look into the great master's work, right, whoever it is, and blues, I include Charlie Parker and Monk and Train and everybody here. The
Yeah.
more I dive in, the more I obviously see how much I don't know about it. So it's like it becomes very philosophical real quick,
Well, no,
like.
I mean, I think sincerity is key. I think that this is kind of cool because it just sort of flows into the next part that I just
Mhm,
popped into my head is that um, you know, can you talk about especially younger cats.
mhm,
Um, I, I was back east and I was listening to one of my interviews with Stanley Clark, and he was just talking about again the embedded language of a certain musical vocabulary. In this case, bebop. Guys like Gene Ammons or Sonny Stitt. They would when they would play live. First of all, they were playing 4 sets a night, probably 6 nights a week. So they were like burning on the bandstand all the time, which doesn't really happen anymore. But
mhm,
the language of that music was so ingrained in their soul that they could just riff off the cuff when they soloed as many bars as they wanted, and as long as they needed to go, never repeating themselves, burning, 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 burning.
mhm,
And what Stanley said today is that a lot of younger cats, and I'm 46, you're a little bit younger than me,
mhm,
so even a younger generation too, because of a variety of factors, younger cats are practicing their improvisational solos. And that is something very different from what the original masters did. And I just wonder if you ever, if you could talk about how you've learned, maybe you do practice your solos, but to me, that's not what spontaneous, creative, in the moment magic is about. And I was hoping you could talk about how you've learned over time when you think back to your earlier days, maybe when you first moved here, even in how you are able to get out of your thinking mind and into an altered state of consciousness when you're playing so that you really become a conduit for information coming through as opposed to, you know, you know, like shedding on some solo that you're just can't wait to get out to the audience where there's no spontaneity or even opportunity for a possible enlightenment.
Yes, 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 yes. And I mean, it, it, with let me start
Go
with
where
a
your mind
yeah,
takes you. You don't have to answer the
yes.
question. Yeah,
Let me start with a quote here. So when I came to the States, I came as a grad student, and I had the incredible privilege to study with John Abercrombie for 2 years. And I
Are you
asked,
kidding me, man?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, his spirit. Uh, I got to send you our interview because I was thinking about him
Oh,
earlier.
please. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I mean,
Yeah.
the man was just like the one thing I remember about him. I mean, there was such a great interview because he was talking about walking when he first got to New York, walking into a Barbieri session, and when it was one of his first gigs, he's like, "Oh my God!" He's like, "Roy Haynes is on drums. What the hell am I doing here?"
Oh,
But he did talk about what he talked about, and what I really got off on was when he first got to New York. The first gig he had was with Johnny Hammond Smith,
oh.
and was an organ player. And the
Hmm.
only way he got the gig was because you needed to have great rhythm. If you didn't have rhythm chops, you weren't going to get the gig. Anyway,
Mm.
I'll send you that later. But
Oh,
go.
that's
So
wonderful.
yeah, you had the go ahead. How did that
Yeah.
manifest?
So basically, just to add to that, I
Yeah,
think every gig I ever got was because I was able to deliver a certain level of rhythm. I think without that, you're completely lost, anyways.
right.
In that kind of music, that's really all it is, but or almost all it is. With John, I remember I asked John. I did my master's thesis. I went to British College. My master's thesis was about how to apply Thelonious Monk on the guitar. And I asked John, like I did a longer interview with him, and I asked him, what is improvisation to you? And he literally just said, improvisation is listening. And I took that to heart. And every time I played with him, he was such an every week I had the privilege to play an hour with John Abercrombie. First of all, his timing was like it was like the ocean. It was so natural and it would roll like the waves. And you never had the feeling that you needed to listen to a metronome or count or do anything
Thank
other than
God.
just
Thank
just
God.
to it
Yeah.
was so natural, but he still the way he listened and improvised, and of course we did certain we mostly played, but sometimes it was just like, okay, Matthias, just improvise on one string. Let's try this today to warm up. And he would do it himself, and I would see how he built his ideas and how he's not scared to like take A to B and C and not jump back to A or something he knows. So I was introduced to several great masters on the one side, that what improvisation is. And as practice purposes, I also wrote out solos. I composed solos over Bright Side's Life or Giant Steps just to get an idea of
Of
like how do
course.
you
No, that's
build,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, how you build a motif, how do you build a solo. But later on, it was never even a question. It went even to the point when I was still back home. I joined a group that did at the time, there was a lot of drum and bass in the clubs, right? And that group was just instrumental, but it was basically just real-time composing, basically. And we came up with songs on the bandstand, right? So the improvisational tool was always there for me, and I always greatly enjoyed it. The other side was the receiving end, and that always had an impact to me too. Like, what does the audience feel? My dad, he's not a musician at all, but I would take him to see Robert Glasper Trio, like in 2005, or Mark Turner Trio. And Fly, the band was called Fly, I think, right? With Larry
Mm.
Grenadier,
Oh my
and
God.
Jeff
Yeah.
Ballard. And my dad just understood the music so well. He understood what was going on, and I was always mind blown. But I realized all you need to do is to listen, right? And I also realized that my dad might not be able to say what is wrong, but if something is wrong, he knows.
Hmm.
And if you fake improvisation, that does not fly, because you miss the very moment. That's where stuff really happens, is in the moment. And improvisation is so big, it can be described as, a whole solo, but it can also be described as like improvise, the melody of a jazz standard properly. lock in with the drummer, improvise in the microcosmos, right? How do you really lock in with your rhythm group? If you lock in with your rhythm group or your band, there's even not a chance that you ever played a song the way you played it before, because you've never played it in that time, in that actual moment, and in that acoustic setting, in that spirit, in that energy, and where you are, where the audience is, whatever it's if you take all of the now in account, then there's no way that you play the same thing, But you can't even duplicate the same solo twice. How is it supposed to work, with a band setting? That's a little bit of an illusion, because like really this music is about playing in, or music maybe in general is about being in that moment and playing it right now. And I also learned that, for example, from my classical background, to see really great classical players play a piece that I've heard 1,000 times, a violin concert or whatever, and they still make it sound like you've never heard it before, because their personal take on it, even if it's the same notes, is so pure, and has so much soul in it, and is so improvised, although they play a pre-composed piece, So like I see improvise in all these elements, right? That's my personal take on it. It takes courage, but that's also life. Life takes courage, It's like
I
we
mean,
improv.
I mean, it's what you're talking about is the classic line from the great bass player who just left the planet, Phil Lesh.
Mm,
He said, the Grateful Dead never played the same song the same way once.
yes,
Oh,
amen to that.
and
Hmm.
and that sort of leads into, um, I've talked to. I wanted to ask you about this too because I mean, Sonny Stitt, David Spinoza, freaking, all these cats. I mean,
Hmm.
they were so they were playing so many live gigs that the music was you had to nothing was more important than the music, but it wasn't that precious. And nowadays a lot of kids, especially towns like Tucson, they might have one gig a week, and they're trying
Yes,
so hard to make
yes,
it perfect that they're practicing these improvisational parts of their songs and not allowing themselves to have the courage to possibly fall down and fall apart. And I just
yes. Hmm.
I remember talking to Spinoza, interviewing him, and he this is a studio thing, but I wanted you to apply it to your own career. Is just he was on his way to a Jengle. He was in Atlantic Studios. He was walking out, and then Dr. John and Arif Mardin pulled him aside and said, "Hey, we were originally going to have a sax solo on this, but we want to put a guitar solo on this tune. Can you do it for us?" And he's like, "Sure." So sets up his amp, gets himself together, and he overbends a string on the first take.
Hmm.
And he's like, "Let me do that again." And they were like, "No, no, that's perfect. You're done. That was great."
Yeah.
It turns out that tune was Right Place, Wrong Time by Dr. John.
Oh,
And-
wow.
all right, so he gets in the funny part of it is he gets in the cab a few weeks later. Record's been out, and he's got like six guitars around his shoulders, going to different sessions. And the cab driver's like, "Hey man, listen, this is my new favorite tune. Right place, wrong time." And he turns it on, and Spinoza's like, "Oh, you won't believe that that's me on guitar." And the guy's like, "Oh, you're full of it." But the point is, he hit a clam. He
Hmm.
hit a clam, and it was not only made the song became a hit. And I've interviewed
Yeah.
Louis Shelton, who was the same, who predated, who came after Tommy Tedesco, but before Larry Carlton in the LA studio scene. Last Train to Clarksville with the Monkees. There's a clam on that. And so I'm not talking about necessarily studio situations, but can you talk about a time, an example in your career when it could have been live with your own bands, but where the trust was so there, the courage was there, that maybe you overbent a note or hit a wrong note, but everybody in the band went there with you, and it created a whole new vocabulary for the song.
I mean, let me see. I feel like these things happen more than one things.
Okay, no, I mean that's really beautiful to hear. I'm just saying
You know?
not to get. I mean, when did you
Yes.
learn not to get hung up with the music being too precious? Nothing is that precious.
Because if it it gotta look how it looks, you know. Plastic surgery doesn't look well with music, you know, or does I'm not, you know, and that leads back now. This is interesting that you bring this up. I want to bring, you know,
Yeah, go
talking
ahead.
about talking about online, talking about cell phones and stuff. For my generation, I remember when I was first able to open Pro Tools on my computer, you know? And
Hmm.
before that, I'm old enough to know I had to go to the studio, right? And was in a lot of recording sessions. And before, it was always like, okay, here's the take. Maybe of a second, maybe a third, but that's it, you know? So that was a different focus. Now all of a sudden, I have the computer. I record from home. It all sounds great. I have my setup. You know, my neighbors are okay with me recording. And I can do whatever I want, right? So I'm getting to the point where I dig deeper, make sure my timing is really 100% on point, which, you know, I'm not a machine, so it's never completely perfect, but I'm trying to reach the goal. And in that process, I realized how much gets lost on the way if you don't let it breathe, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
got, after a bunch of months or years, or like from project to project, I realized this is you taking out the soul. You just gotta play it well. If there's a real mess up, you know, maybe take that out, fix that. But if it, you know, it's sometimes we believe that because we see it so up close as a musician. I see my guitar track so up close. I hear every little nuance, and most of the things most listeners don't even hear that it might be off, right? But it's just off for me personally,
That's
right?
right. That's
So I'm
right.
like, okay, just let it go. That was, for example, one anecdote that taught me a lot. Again, coming back to Miss Hill, because like I spent 7 years with her, and it was a lot of work, like constantly studio. And with her, it was like this: we'd record until 5 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even later, and the entire band would be half asleep, and it's time for a take, and everybody gets up, and it's a freaking first take for everybody. So the bar was so high just to be in the moment now and be focused, right? And there was one moment where we recorded, which later was used for the live shows. It was a stadium tour. It's a huge tour, world tour for 1.5 years. And I had one of those slips, right? I had one where one note where I just played a little too wild, maybe, which is
Hmm.
perfectly fine for live. But for a recording that goes along, you know, with a backing track, because the arenas were so big, she wanted like more support, you know, musically. So we had like an Ableton session for certain elements of the show. And one of my tracks was in there, and every night I heard that note, and it hurt my brain. And I did tell her,
Oh
I did
man.
tell her halfway through the tour, I was like, Michelle, I don't know. Could we fix this? It's driving. She's like, oh no, no, that's great. You know, it has that energy, and that was the conversation. You know,
That's
it's
exactly it. What
mhm.
is the intention? There are, you know, the
Yes,
idea is that it does it feel good? Because, you know, you're
yes,
coming at it from a not saying perfectionist point of view, but just your own artistic bend, and you cringe because you know you could have done it better. But
hmm,
yet, if it feels good, that's what one thing about me. I mean, you know, the stuff that, you know, the concerts I promote, and the videos that I try to drive, you know, tribal urgency on the bandstand. Like, a lot of cats have come up to me and said, you know, man, you've really helped me get over my stage fright about being video recorded, or just in general, like being myself, because, you know, they go through the same thing. You know, I put up something that is just burning, and yet they're maybe listening to this one note that they can't believe they played, but yet it's just, you know, it's like a sports highlight. You know, it gets you off. It gets the people off, and that is
yes,
the idea of saying it's. And that really is more of a lesson where, you know, ultimately, it would be really nice for you to talk about when you went up to her and she said, "No, it feels good." But
hmm,
ultimately, how have you learned to not allow that stuff to eat you alive? Because I think a lot of cats do get dark because they just get consumed with and
yes,
perseverate about small little things that hang them up, not recognizing that they didn't get fired. They're doing,
yeah,
you know, it's like
hmm,
the world's not ending. It's just like, stop. They can't let it go. I mean, how have you learned to let things? I think that's kind of
yes,
what I'm getting at, is like, you know, to me, I remember Pat Martino, one of my first interview ever, and my dear soul brother, my uncle. He said, art is to be shared, not to be judged.
Yeah,
And you know
yeah.
what? You get even in this interview, there's like, if we got 3 or 4 hot moments, we did our job, and that's
Yes,
it.
yes, yes,
All right.
yeah.
And so how have you learned not to let it go?
I mean, I struggled with that a lot too. Obviously, there's so much pressure, and we compare ourselves. And that my girlfriend tells my daughter all the time. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And it really that's really it takes it out. And it took me years also to realize it and not be too critical or beat
Right.
myself down. It all goes hand in hand. What you said earlier is the one thing is the opportunities to even just play, right? You can't just like practice this art and then just play one show maybe every other week or so and play the same way as if you would play every night. It's just not possible. So early on for me personally, I always was looking for playing opportunities. I would even in New York, I would just have private jam sessions, meet up with people all the time just to stay in it. And back then, I wasn't even so super aware of why. I just really enjoyed the company of playing. I just wanted to play. But how much it helps, I didn't even know for personal growth. Feels much more productive to be home and try to play faster or whatever.
Right.
But that really helped. For me personally, it was just a matter of maturity later on where I realized, hey, we already live in such a crazy world. Like the one thing we have that gives so much joy is music, and being able to even play and have people receive it and come listen is so incredibly humbling and is so wonderful for me personally that at this point I'm just grateful when I play and I'm just in a good mood, even if I'm sleepy, because it's just so wonderful. That's the one thing, just how do you approach it? What am I even doing here? Does a wrong note matter, or does it matter that I just spent 2 hours playing music with wonderful people, and if I mess up, my friends got me. It's not that
That's
I fall
right.
off the band
That's
stage.
right. That's it.
That's
They pick you up. Yeah.
yes, yes, and good nights and bad nights make good nights special, or
Hmm.
the other way around. It's life. It's real, right? So all of that really did help me to like get over that, and then just bring the other thing that I want to mention as from the musician's point of view to get back to what John told me with listening. That's my safe space on stage. Sometimes I have difficulties. I'm getting in the music, especially when it's like, let's say, you only got 2 hours of sleep. You just came from the plane and you're supposed to like play a ballad, right? It is sometimes like that, right? On the road. And what really helps me is to when I have these moments where it's like difficult to dive in or get in for whatever reason, I really turn around and look at my band and listen to the band. And once I listen to the band, what I personally do becomes so insignificant almost, or my focus shifts on the music that I'm really only maybe halfway am aware of what I'm doing, or but at least I'm not over paying too much attention to what I'm actually doing and what I'm thinking and what I'm playing, because in the moment it doesn't matter. What matters is that I listen, and that's usually even listening to recordings. The best nights I have is when I really remember, oh, the band sounded so great, you know? And that's my safe spot. That's also what I tell students, like when they're in a moment where it's sometimes visually so interesting too. On the guitar, for example, I would have a student, he would play, right? And he would play the
Yeah.
scales, and he's like, I'm just not inspired. I don't get it. And I was like, I literally redirect their focus. I was like, okay, play a solo and sing along. It doesn't matter if you hit the notes, does not matter. Sing along, and they sing along. And I say, now close your eyes and play along with your singing. And it's night and day every single time. It's just crazy when the focus is not so on the skill set. What have as you said, what have I practiced? Can I get this out? That 99% of what I practice never come out in the way I practice them. But they come out in different ways, and that's beautiful. Whenever it's the time for it. When you focus on this, on the music, on everything around, and how do you fit in and how it sounds as a total, then these issues subside. It's really beautiful, and then you get a um, pure experience, for yourself and for the listener, I think too. And that's something that I really picked up from John big time, because I
Oh
thought
God.
he was a master of that. The way he would immerse in the music was just, even playing Just Do It with him. It was just the lesson was just making the music,
But his spirit is looking down on us
Yes.
today, man.
Oh man. Mm.
I just, to me, it's about, you talk about that example, you get off, you got barely any sleep, and, physically you're not feeling great and you're tired. And then really all you do is open your ears and listen and start reacting to the sound around you. And you take yourself out of your, you basically try to get out of your own way. I mean, uh, do you feel like, um, you know, I guess maybe the question is like, how do you, especially with quantized rhythm,
Hmm.
a lot of modern music, there's been a lot of digital beats crunched into the youth's ears, and it's not, you don't get these broken ride cymbal patterns like with Roy Haynes or Philly Joe, or
Hmm.
everybody. You go back in time. I don't care if it was Jim Keltner, John Bonham, or Philly Joe Jones. I mean, everybody had their
Hmm.
own individual sound, and the rhythm was round. And
Hmm.
when you have quantized rhythm, it's very much up and down. And I just wonder, especially in like a hip hop setting, rap setting, whatever, what do you do to keep the rhythm round? I only say that because it's very hard for me to dance to quantized rhythm. And a lot of hip hop that's really just what it is rhythm. So how do you, when you're in that, even when you're just playing those David T. Walker, chicka, 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 how do
Hmm.
you keep the rhythm round?
Oh, that's a good question.
Danceable. I guess a lot
Yes,
of cats love
yes.
dancing to quantized music, but it's like it's just too linear. It's too up and down for me.
Um, I mean,
Maybe
that's
there's no
that's a.
answer. I don't, I don't know.
I mean, overall, my take on music in general is like if it feels right, it is right, right?
I want to ask you
And
this question before you go on because this is
yeah.
really important. Like, I don't like how much of your like in the hip hop settings,
Hmm.
how much of your role, not in the same obviously genre, but how much of that role is like the Freddie Green role in a bassy band, and how much do you get to stretch out? I think that, I mean, how much rhythm are you really even playing in this stuff?
I love how you put that.
Yeah,
That's actually really great because Freddie Green.
yeah,
That's exactly what I do, and
yeah.
with most acts because really it's all about the rhythm,
That's
right?
why you. That's why
Um,
everybody wants to hire you, man. Because that, I mean,
ah,
if you've mastered, if you've gotten even close to him, then that's where it's at.
well, I don't know about that, right?
I know.
But it's
Yeah.
that's where I strive towards, for real, for real. Like he's one of the superheroes. Now, I took quite some time early in my career to dive deep. Just like the voice leading alone. Hello, like
Yeah.
his. I mean, it's absolutely absolute master. So as when it comes to hip hop, I don't see it too much different than, for example, everything that comes out of funk, right?
Right.
James Brown works in loops as well, like in certain phrases, right? And then if you extend it a little bit further, you could say that the blues is nothing else than a loop too, because it's 12 bars, and hip hop might be a 4 bar loop or an 8 bar loop, right? Or even a 12 or 60 bar loop. So for me, it's like it's just get the rhythm right. How does what I do personally affect the groove? Sometimes it's like the discrepancy between the elements that make it so extraordinary, right?
Right.
And the repetition lies just in the way it was, I want to say, created. It came from a technical point of view, and then musicians picked up on it and played it. But then the music evolved so much too. So the beautiful way with which for example Jay Dilla took the drums and the elements off the grid, off quantized stuff, and gave it
Yes.
life again. It breathes differently, right? um it's I don't really, this is my personal take. I don't really see so much difference in hip hop than in any other given American African art form, because in the end of the day, it just has to groove. It has to be danceable, whatever, you know, word one wants to give it, you know, it's like, there's always the extremes. And of course, like when something is now, again, coming back to technology, it's so easy to create some sound waves, right? That mimic some great music, right? To say it in a gentle way, you know, there's a lot of music out there that that doesn't have the depth to it, you know, it doesn't have the element, you know, that makes it so special, that makes it so groovy, so funky, whatever it is, right? So the technology is not really helping to enhance the things, the music that is there that is so genius, you know. But honestly, I feel the same way about a lot of jazz that I hear, you know.
Yeah.
Because like what you said, the pattern, for example, the broken pattern, the right, you know, I see so many cats playing and they're phenomenal at what they do, but they picked up at what Brian Blade might be doing, but they did not pick up on what Philly Joe Jones was doing, right?
Absolutely.
And
You're
then
nailing it. You're nailing it. Yeah.
you're missing that element, and
It's
you know, so
the lineage. Yeah.
yes, yes. And with hip hop, I feel the same way, you know? Like if you hear somebody play a hip hop groove on the drums, you can immediately tell if the person knows what they're doing or not. You know, immediately. After four bars, you know, they know what they're doing, you know? Because it has that depth, right? Imagine somebody plays James Brown who has never really played that music before. It's not going to sound the same, right? So again, you got to put the work into these rhythms just as much, you know, and trying. I mean, I listened to isolated tracks of some of the Thriller record, right?
Right.
And I mean, the guitar takes are, I mean, speaking of playing on the grades, I mean, masters, masterful, right? So,
Was it Paul Jackson Jr. or was it?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Absolute, one of my biggest
Yeah.
superheroes. And
Legendary cat. Yeah.
yes, so like, you know, what I'm trying to do when I do these hip hop records is not very different from that, right? It might just be the phrasing might be different, and that offers great opportunities, you know, because now if you have a guitar sample that does not really match the BPM of the beat, so it's not
Right.
really right on the grid, that offers for me a totally new way of phrasing within a rhythm, you know, that can grow naturally for me, and it offers a complete new universe of rhythmic expression, right? So that's how I see, you know, I feel like it's a great opportunity to learn, see the material that you might know, because you know many of the records that will be sampled I might know, might be jazz records, might be soul funk records, whatever, but putting in a different context and really nailing them, you know, has personally helped me so much to expand my rhythmic universe, you know, without having to use my brain. And not to say that that is a bad thing, but I didn't intellectualize a lot of that stuff, you know, I just felt it, you know, or like
I think
go.
it's really. I think it's profound because I just remember Reggie Workman told me too. You know, I mean, Roy, rest in peace, or Max, or Elvin. A lot of those drummers, they had a distinctive character on their cymbal beat. And he said today he could go and watch, just like you said, a 45-minute set of very exemplary, burning, jazz. And
Mhm.
the drummers do not touch the cymbals. They don't touch them in the entire set. And so there's
Mm.
something, this is more of a drummer thing, uh, but it's this idea of being a broken player, and I don't mean that from a soul point of view. I just mean, it's that Paul Motion, it's the Roy Haynes,
Mm.
it's being unpredictable and breaking up the symbol pattern, having a distinctive symbol characters on their symbol.
Mhm.
Because even Joe Sam, I mean, you go back to Jazz Crusaders records. I mean, Styx Hoopers. These guys, the colors that were coming out were just phenomenal, and the same really with everybody. And so I think in some cases, well, I guess maybe as we wrap up set one, Matthias, I
Mhm.
have to ask you, what is one thing now in your life, professionally or personally, where you feel like you need to grow, you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone in order to grow?
What is the one thing? Huh.
There's not one thing. I'm just saying, what is
Yeah.
that? Is there an elephant in the room for Matthias, or is there something you're like? Because you know what, it's just and I'm not talking about promoting
Mhm.
yourself more on social media. I'm just like in general, is there something that you want to cultivate in your life that you have been that you know you need to do?
Um, I mean, personally, right now, as of today and as of this month and the last half year, I just need to write more music.
More original music?
Yes, I
Yeah.
wrote a whole lot in my career and I'm just getting back to it. And I know the importance of it because it really helps to define what I want in my music and what I can get rid of. It's like no BS, right? When you write music, these ideas are good, these are not so good. It really helps for personal growth and more even more intuitive writing. I do practice more these days, and I'm really trying to like just be more intuitive, just intuitive. The same way that I would like play along with a blues record, I need to play along with other records too, and not to get too technical, if that makes sense. Like really take the music for exactly what it is. The Charlie Parker solos are so singable. Why not just sing it? I don't have to exactly know which harmonies he's playing, even if maybe my ear picks it up by now, anyways. But so it's more like, dive deeper into just this, you know, um, because my thoughts might be with everything going on in the world these days,
Oh
um,
man. Yeah, I mean
I might.
yeah.
It's like music does offer healing, and I truly believe that,
No, no,
So
that
yeah.
is what that
Hmm.
is um I mean that we should definitely do set too because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, at the rate we're going, with everything being so paper mached and so AI based, just in general, the artificiality of life, um, you can throw all these numbers out and talk about how great the economy is, this, that, and the other, but um, we're headed towards some very, very traumatic times.
Hmm.
Hopefully,
Absolutely.
me and you and our families, they will not be impacted.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, uh, if there is a dissolution of civilization, if there's a breakdown, if there is trauma that is unforeseen and unpredicted, um, the people that are going to be most needed, the doctors that are going to be most needed, are musical healers. Just like Ayrton's father was in Brazil, people would be having psychotic episodes or pain in their chest, and he would come play drums and they would be healed. And people would look at you askance like that. But now more than ever, and as we move forward into this very despotic time, um,
Hmm.
if people are allowed to play music,
Hmm.
then you will, and hopefully what comes with that is justified compensation, because that's a whole other issue, but it's the idea of saying, do we really see a musician as a viable profession in this world, in this country anymore? And
Hmm.
that's a whole
Hmm.
other ball of wax. But
Yeah.
make no mistake, you're providing a service to humanity. It's essential. And for someone like me, it's continued to carry me on to
Hmm.
seek out cats like you and to
Oh, thank you
dive
so
deep
much.
and pull stuff out that can have some meaning for not just your daughter, my kids,
Hmm.
but someone who in 50 years might be kind of in a dark place and they find this
Yes.
interview and listen to it and it turns them around.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dave.
Hey, Matthias, be cool.
I
We'll be in
needed that.
touch, man.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you
All right.
so much for inviting me. Hey, really, really appreciate it. That was
Yeah, cheers, man.
seriously. Have a great day.
You too, babe.